this week we're going to talk about Starknet. So this is session 3. I know last week we talked about Cairo, and we did a live session on walking you through Cairo syntax. Okay, so again, it says we are on Starknet and smart contract. Next week we're gonna go front end, then Dojo, and the 6th week is still iffy. I was thinking of maybe an open discussion of maybe Dojo. So I'm thinking if more people are interested in on-chain games, and we'll go Dojo 2 times in the session. Okay, so for today's topic, we're going to talk about installing dependencies. Hello Cairo, so it's like a simple hello world in Cairo. And then a counter contract. So a counter contract is probably like a basic thing, but it will help you kind of learn most of the fundamentals of what you would need to program a Starknet contract. And then I'll share other resources with you after the class. Okay, so we're going into dependencies. So for the dependencies, if you want to, write a smart contract, you will need to have some of these tools installed on your computer so that, you'll be able to build the package. So ASDF is a package manager. So you use this to maintain, or most of the dependencies, again, that you need in the contract. So Scarb is one, Starknet Foundry is another. And this is just, a tool for people using VS Code. You will need this. So guess we can get started with ASDF. So I'll copy, I don't want to open it here. So I'm just going to open a new browser. Give me a second. I'll open Brave. I'm going to check for ASDF. Give me a second. And sadly today, I don't think everybody will be able to follow along in the tutorial because I use a Mac operating system, and the installation guide I'm going to be following will be for Mac. But if you're using a Linux, you can also follow along because most of this will be similar. If you're using a Windows, on the other hand, it will be a bit more difficult to follow along because you will need to have like WSL, which is a Windows subsystem for Linux. And because I don't have a Windows, I will not be able to show that. But if anybody is, willing or open to making a recording of this, I'm willing to work with you, maybe set up an office hour, and we can record setting up this on Windows. But for today, we're just going to go with Mac. So this is the installation guide for ASDF. So just getting started, you should be able to kind of view through everything. I have it already installed on my computer, so I will still do some of this, but I'm not going to do everything in details. So anyways, the first step for installing dependency is to look for, your own computer dependency. For me, it's a Mac OS, and we use Homebrew. So I can say brew install core util crawl git. I already have all this dependency, but you know what? I'm just going to do it again. So I open WizDev, which is my terminal. Give me a second, I'll pull that to frame again. Okay, so you can use any terminal of your choice, and I'll just paste this. So it says brew install core util crawl and git. These are all the dependencies. Again, these are all already installed on my computer, so it should tell me it's updating. So we just follow this and wait for it. Okay, so this is outdated. Follow this. Install Git. I'm sure you're already familiar with Git, but if you're not, Git is a tool for version control, and most of you will use it a lot in this, place, and maybe most people are more familiar with GitHub. But anyways, second, I already followed that. So the next step would be to use Git to clone ASDF, which I already have, but I would just want to use brew. So I'll just go brew install ASDF again. Then clear and then do this. And it should tell me that it's already installed and it's just updating. So it says warning, ASDF is already installed and up to date. So I don't need to reinstall it. So I'll just leave it. But for you, you should, if this is your first time, it should show you the installation step. And then we can install whatever we need with ASDF. So in this case, we can go to the SCARB. We can go to the SCARB documentation, and you would see how we can install SCARB with ASDF. So it says ASDF plugin add SCARB. So you want to run this command. Again, I already have it. I'm not going to run this. ASDF install SCARB latest. I already have the latest version, so I'm not going to run this. And ASDF global set SCARB to the latest. Again, just need to follow this step and you should be fine. And if I run ASD, because we're talking about SCARB, so if I do SCARB-V, it should show me the version of SCARB I have. So it's 2.8.3. That's the one I set up as my global. But the latest would be, let's do ASDF list all SCARB. It should is 8.4. Okay, so I know I already have that installed. So I'm going to use my tools version and just set it as my global. In this case, I could just go, yeah, and say, well, just set it up. So if I do this again and I do SCARB V, it should show the latest 2.8.4. Anybody following, or is there a question? So Hector says, brew regularly takes a long time for me. It is still working here. Okay, yeah, just take your time. You should be able to install it with brew. And if you have an issue with brew, there's like other, examples you could use. Like you could install it directly. You could use Spark, or you could install it directly. Since you already have Git installed, you could just install it directly. But if you have any issue, just let me know. Okay. So again, we have ASDF installed, we have SCARB installed. The next one will be Foundry. So again, you can go with Foundry, but I believe ASDF also has Foundry, so we can check. ASDF and Foundry. So it's called Starknet Foundry. You see all the lists. Again, I already have it installed. I have 0.3.1, but if you want to install it to be ASDF install, and you just put the Foundry, yeah, and then you put the latest version that you want to install. But you tell me that I already have it installed. So this will be the command. I will try to leave more instructions if people need it, but I think this is pretty much the most steps you would need. So we already have Foundry installed. Next up will be VS Code, but I'm not using VS Code. So I mean, if you want to follow it, it's pretty much the same step. You use to install any extension of VS Code, you can install it. There's another tool that's not listed here that I would still recommend everyone install. It's called Starknet. So if you go to docs.starknet.io, and we go to quick start and set up your environment, it will tell you these tools that you need. We already installed SCARB now. So Starknet is another tool that is essential. So we go to the documentation, yeah, and it just tells you how to install it. So in this case, I already have the latest version, I believe, but we can still try to install it. So we will run this command, call this URL and .sh. So I'll just do this. So I'll clear my terminal and paste this. And then we need to follow this instruction. So it's start like up. So I'll put this here. Okay. So I have latest version, so I can do a stack by -v again to see. So it's 0.3.5, which I just installed now. And yeah, these are all the dependencies you need to, write Cairo smart contracts. Don't know, is there any question right now? I allow people to unmute themselves, so if you want to, you can ask questions now. If not, I can go to the next slide. Any questions?
No, everything fine.
All right, no problem. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide since there are no questions. So today again, it's a counter workshop. So we just go through like, you know, run a counter and deploying it on a Starknet contract, on the Starknet testnet, which is Sepolia. So it's a live coding session like last time. So it's counter workshop. This is the GitHub URL. So I'm just going to copy this the link address and I'll go to my terminal again. And I'll just seed into documents and just make a directory called Basecamp or counter workshop. I'll just call it, Basecamp counter and cd into that. And I'll git clone and paste the URL. If anybody needs this, let me know. I can paste in the chat. If not, you can just follow along today. And you would do this as an assignment anyways. So we have it cloned. So we want to open it. This is my text editor. So I'm just going to try to open the counter workshop in this case. This is it installed. And I will paste this here also so that we can see the instructions that we need to follow. So in this case, we need to do a git switch to step 1 to get started. We are in the master branch. So first step is to do a git checkout to step 1 to complete the task there. So I'm just going to do a Command J to open my terminal here and then paste this. So git checkout to step 1. So already have this checked out. So the instruction here is initialize your project structure within a clone repo by using scarb, package manager, and enabling compilation of Starknet contracts. So the requirements here, when initializing the project with scarb, name the package as workshop. Then we're also asked to create a new Cairo file on that SRC directory named counter Cairo and add the following code. So we're supposed to add this code there. And then we remove the things inside lib and then do. And for us to verify that this works, we just need to run a scarb run. So in this case, the first thing we should do is scarb init. There are ints here. So if you follow the ints, it says check out the scarb init command and initialize the project. So for the first time, let's just assume I don't really know how to use scarb init. So I can just say scarb init-h. It's supposed to give me, I'm going to extend this. Can you all see my screen clearly, or should I zoom in a little bit? Let me see. Okay, I
I
zoomed in
see
one.
it. Great.
Okay, I'm trying to zoom this in a little bit. Okay, you can see it clearly. You see that this is scarb init. So it just says create a new scarb package in an existing directory. And this is what we are required to do. So we say scarb init, and then we need to name it something. So we just do a dash name. And for this instruction, it says we should name it workshop. So we'll do scarb dash name workshop, then enter. So the latest scarb is going to ask us to choose an option. Either we want to use a Starknet Foundry, which is default, or Cairo test. And in our case, we want to use Starknet Foundry. This is also other dependency we installed earlier. Okay, so I'm going to do that, which will install this. And most times when you're programming, you're probably not going to, if you want to create a new project, you're probably not going to use scarb init, you're going to use scarb new. But anyways, you can just check out scarb-h. You can see all the commands that you can use in scarb, right? So scarb, it says it's a software mason, a Cairo package manager. So it's a package manager for Cairo. And these are all the commands you will use. So if you want to create a new file, project, is probably using scarb new and the name of the project. And so scarb new, create a new project. But anyways, because we wanted to follow the instruction here, which asks us to use a scarb init, that's why we use scarb init. Okay, and if you check the scarb.toml file now, you'll see that the name is workshop, which satisfy the first requirement. The next requirement is create a new file under SRC. So again, you will see SRC folder here. If you click it, it wants us to create a new file. So in this place, I'm just going to cd into SRC. and create a new file. And what's the name of the new file we should create? It's called counter Cairo. I'm just going to copy this and paste it, right? Let's try scarab build. It's probably, let's see, it should pass actually, but let's just try scarab build and see if it builds. Yeah. Okay, it builds, but again, we're not done with the instruction. So the instruction here is in the new file that we just created, we should paste this command. So I'm going to do that. I'll paste this command, this code snippet. And then in the lib, it wants us to remove it and put counter module. So in this lib, this is like the default that comes in. We will just kind of highlight it and just put mod counter. It's just going to register this file counter. So now if we do a scarab build, okay, now it runs an error. Yes, okay. It runs into an error because we've not configured it properly. We need to add dependency. So let's see what it says here. Okay, yeah, we need this dependency. And again, most times you're not going to have to set this up from scratch. If you use the scarab new, you should have this. But this is just, I guess, a PU walkthrough just in case you will need it, and you probably understand it better this way. So in this dependency, we want to put Starknet as a dependency. It failed because we were trying to use Starknet, and Starknet doesn't exist. So we'll put Starknet as a dependency, yeah, and then we try this again, scarab build, and this time it should build. Okay, so it built, and I believe that we should be good. So yeah. So we should do a target, Starknet contract, specify the version, specify the Cairo version and scarab terminal. We already did that. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we finished step 1. So we go to step 2. So in step 2, we just do a git checkout and go to step 2. So we just do this very quick. And then we see the instruction here. So in the instruction here, it says add snforge as a dependency within your scarab.toml file to allow execution of tests with Starknet Foundry. So these are the requirements. In your scarab.toml file, we should declare a snforge std package as your project dependency and enable CASM. So we should also enable CASM. In your scarab.toml, define a script named test that to be able to run snforge test. And then in your scarab.toml, set up the edition to 20.01. I think there's a mistake. It's going to be 2023-11. And then we should run a scarab test. So let's try to see if we run a scarab test if this works. It fails, so we've not passed it. So we need to kind of work our way to pass it. So in this case, we need snforge or Foundry as our dependency. So if we click on these, we should see the documentation here and adding it. But we can also use the scarabs. They have scarab.xyz. So if you're familiar with Rust, you will know about crates, right? If you're familiar with, Node, you know about npm like registry. So scarabs.xyz is like the Cairo package registry where you should see all the packages that you installed. And luckily for us, we'll see a snforge std here. So in this case, it even shows us the instruction of how we can add it, automatically from the command line. So this is the step I would want to do. So I'll go back here and do this and just paste that. So you see that the snforge std was added to our dependencies, and the version number was here, which is 0.3.1. So you quickly check out 2 version. We have it here, 0.3.1. So this should be good. Then the next requirements that we're told to do is to define a script named test to be able to run a snforge test. So we need to define a script named test. So in this case, we should be able to see an int on how we can do that. So if you click on this int, it should show you. So this is running scripts in with Scarb. So if you want to get a better understanding of it, you can kind of like do a quick, you can read it. But in this case, I'm just going to copy this part. This is what I need. Do this, and then we need a script name test. And then we will call it not minus equals. So we will go back to the instruction. It told us to put this there. And again, if you want to read more about the Foundry, this is the documentation. The documentation is a bit outdated, but if you take a look, you should be able to get like a grasp of like what it is. I know you can use it to run tests, and you can use it to kind of like, you can use it for writing tests, and it also has, okay, let's quickly go back here. So far, just a toolchain for developing Starknet smart contract. It helps with writing, deploying, and testing your smart contract. It's inspired by Foundry. If you're coming from, Solidity, you should be familiar with Foundry already, but this is the Starknet version of that. Anyways, we added the test, and so we can quickly test this with Scarb test and see if this works. Okay, so one test passed, 0 failed, so it worked. I'm gonna error with the Universal Sierra compiler. So yeah, what if you have you installed the SDF? So if you do a SDF current, what do you see there? One, and you can unmute yourself if you just want to interact. Okay, I'm just gonna move on and wait for you. I don't have SDF. So how did you install it? Because you need, I would recommend you install SDF and install the rest with SDF. Okay, you did it manually. Okay, so if you do a SN, I think it's called SN Forge -V, or yeah, if you do SN Forge -V, what do you see? And if you're still facing it, we can just maybe wait the end after the class and I can walk you through it so I don't kind of like hold people back. Yeah, you can do it manually, but the easiest way is probably to use the SDF. It would be, you use it to manage, because Starknet has like a very quick update cycle. So there's always probably a new version of something every other month or every month. So it will just help you in kind of like staying up to date and like not having to have an headache of like manually setting a lot of things. So I would highly recommend ASDF, and you can use it for so many other things. Apart from Starknet, you can use it to manage a lot of your other dependencies on your computer. But anyways, we finished this test, so it passed. The other thing is just to set this, because by default, it's going to be 2024, but this runs into an issue with importing like the storage class. So let's just leave it in this one. 2023-11 should pretty much work. And you're going to see this like down. I'm going to switch it back just so that you can see what I'm saying down the line. But anyways, we can go to step 3 since we passed step. Okay, no. I'll paste this here. Okay, so in step 3, it wants us to implement a constructor function to initialize an input number and store a variable named counter within a contract. So requirements: store a variable named counter as U32, type in the storage struct. So again, if you go back to the counter, this is like the basic requirements for a Starknet contract. You'll see this macro. This is like an attribute. We call it macro, yeah. called Starknet contract. And then we have this pub mod counter contract, storage. So every Starknet contract needs a storage. It's not going to compile if we don't have a storage. But anyways, this is where we put the contract state in the storage. So in this case, it wants us to put a counter here of type U32. So we save this. You will see. So implement a constructor function that initializes the counter variable with a given input value. The input variable of the constructor should be named initial value. So again, if you want to understand pretty much more about that, you will see like contract storage and constructor. So we already did the storage, but okay, this is the constructor. But again, if you want to read more about the storage, you can see it in the documentation here. So contract storage, it pretty much explains more about the storage if you want to understand. I would still recommend that you all read this. But in our own case, we'll go back to the constructor, which is what we want to do. So in this place, for me, I'll just copy and paste. I'll just copy this constructor and modify it here. So we have a constructor here. I can pretty much just take out this because we don't need it and take out this. So this is a constructor. And if you want to, again, learn more about it, constructors are a special type of function that only runs once when deploying a contract and can be used to initialize the state of a contract. And in this case, the instruction was that we should initialize the state of the counter to initial value. So we can do this. So put person initial value, which is subtype U32, yeah. And we are going to say self.counter.write. And going to be initial value. And this should be able to write, because again, when we say self.counter.write, we are writing the state. If you want to read it, it's self.counter.read. In this case, we just, write. Again, you should see the example here, like initializing it if you want to kind of dig deep into it. And in this book, it actually explains it more in detail. So you can read this if you want to get a better understanding of that. But anyways, so let's check the requirement and see if we finish that. So store a variable named counter as U32 type. We do have a variable named counter. It says implement the constructor function that initializes the counter variable with a given input. So again, initial value, and then we initializing the counter variable with this input that we're given. So if we run a scarp test, let's see if this works. Okay, so this passed. So this good. Then we go on to, okay, yeah, I was saying something about this, prelude. If you want to understand prelude, you can also read more about it. But if we use this initial one, which is the latest here, there is an issue with it. So if you do this, yeah, the tests are written beforehand so that we should be able to kind of like go through this, and it's for you to like learn more. But yeah, it should fail, and it says method write not found in the storage. But so this is why we are going back with this one, and we should be good. So if we run this test now, it should work fine. And again, if you want to read more about prelude, you can go here, the inside here, all the information you need. It's pretty much here for you to kind of dig deep into the class. Okay, so we have done this. We go to step 4. So I'm going to just clear this. And for John, your question, are the tests written beforehand? Yes, the tests are here. This is kind of like deploying your contract, and this is the test for individual variables. I'm not sure why this red line is here. Yeah, the red line is because we're trying to import something that doesn't exist. Again, we have to, make it work. So if we do a scrap test, this will fail because we don't meet the requirements, especially this does not even exist and we're trying to import it. So anyways, in this case, we're supposed to implement an interface for the contract which contains the get counter function. This function should return the value of a stored counter variable within the contract. And these are the requirements. So requirements implement an interface for a function named get counter. Again, if you check the contract anatomy here, I'm just going to close this once. You should see how a contract, this is the interface. So this is what interface should look like. So you have a Starknet interface macro, and then you have a trait, whatever name it is. In this case, it says iSimple. Yours will probably be different. And then we have a T contract state here. And then we can have a set. So set is like ref. So we are writing to the control state, and get is, in this case, is getting. But anyways, you see self and this @ symbol is like taking a snapshot of the contract state here and returning a value. Anyways, we're going to kind of like practice it a little bit here and we'll see. So the first thing is that it wants us to create an interface. So we can just copy this. I don't know if someone wants to help me in this case. Anyone familiar with this? And this is the example here. So maybe it can help. So we have to use a trait keyword. So trait and the name of the interface and the T contract state, and then curly brace and the function name, or again, the functions that we want to declare in this interface. And in this case, it wants us to have a function named get counter that reads from the contract state and returns a value. Is anybody willing to help in this case? Anyone? No? Or should I start calling names? No one? I'm waiting for you all though. Okay. Seems there's no one that's trying to attempt this, so I'm just gonna go for it. Swallow the frog. So it's traits, I counter. I'll give it a T contrast state. And then it's a function that reads. So we'll do fn. What's the name of the function again? Get counter. So function get counter, which is because it reads. So just take a snapshot of the T contract state. And again, you see it here. I'll just copy because why not? And then it returns a U32. Oh yeah, so I made a mistake here. I need to put a hash here. And then save. Okay, so what's the next thing? Implement an interface. So we still need to implement it. Again, if you click on this, should give you the instructions here. Maybe, maybe not. Anyways, we need API embed v0. This is just saying that this contract will be public. So we do an implement, and then we can call it counter of, because we defined the counter out of scope of this contract. So we just use a super here, super I counter. And then this one is a contract state. And so yeah, it's telling us that all traits are not implemented, it's meeting get counter. So again, because it's of I counter, we need to implement the get counter. So we'll just do that. And we should be good. Let's see if there's any other thing we need to do as a requirement. So the get counter function must be within the counter interface named here, implement that interface that implements it. So let's run a test and see if this passes. Okay, awesome. So this did not pass. So why is that? The workshop counter is not visible. Okay, so we need to make it visible. So we need to do a pub, yeah. Um, let's run this again. Okay, why is it not passing again? So the counter also is not visible, so we need to make this visible. I think if we do a pub struct, it should be, but let's just do it this pub here. Pub. And this is a relatively new concept introduced to Cairo, where contracts are private by default, or like this. Okay, what else is this? Oh, okay, in this case, I need to make this visible too. So yeah, we need to manually set it to a public so that we can read it outside of the contract. So this is what we do. And yeah, it passes now. Okay. We go on to step 5. But before we go to step 5, is there any question here? So I don't want to keep going. And I see that a lot of people are struggling with like setting it up, which is okay. We're going to move a little bit more, and then I'm going to deploy the contract with test this, and I can help one of your, work on this live. If anybody's willing to share their screen, we can fix that issue for them. Okay, so I think we just finished step 4. I will go to step 5, which we just need to check out. Okay, so we just do it yeah, and check out. So we go to step 5, which is saying that within the same interface created in the previous step, implement a function called increase counter that can increment the current value of the counter by 1 each time it is invoked. Implement a function named increase counter, which increases counter by 1. So we need a function in that same interface called increase counter. So we can go here and declare a function, fn increase counter, but this time it is referencing state because it is modifying the state. It's going to be increasing the counter by 1, right? So we just need increase counter, ref self, t state. Again, if you want to understand it, I'm sure there is a documentation here that talks about it. This is again, but there should be a documentation on the under the smart contract in Cairo that would help you understand this better. But again, if you're modifying the state, we need to use a ref self keyword. This just means it's referencing the contract state here. So that's what we just did. Ref self t control state. Okay. Implement a function named which increases the contrast state by 1. So now you see again, this is throwing an error because we have a function here that is not implemented. So we need to implement that. So it's fn increase. We just do it here, and this auto completed it. So again, it's ref self contrast state. So it's going to modify the contrast state, and then it says let counter. So we're reading the value of counter here, which is set here, and then we're saying self.write. So we're now increasing it by 1. So counter that we just read from here. So this is creating a variable counter that is read from the contrast state, and then we are writing to it again +1. And this should be the solution to increase the contrast state. So we can do a test to see. Let's go test. Okay. How do we get auto completion? I don't understand, John. When you say how do you get auto completion, do you mean while I'm writing here? Because I use Copilot, which allows the auto completion. Or are you talking of auto completion while you're using like Stackline or the other command tools that you need? Which one? Okay. So you're responding a bit slow. Oh yeah, Copilot is what I use for the auto completion. Anyways, we ran the test and that test passed. So we moved to step 6. Where then paste this. This should check out. And then we should complete the steps and steps. So implement an event name counter increase that emits the current value of counter variable every time the value is increased. So this is just going to talk more about events and emission. So if you click on here, we should be able to see events and how it works here. So in this case, we need an event attribute macro. So we put this here and then a derived macro also. So we just put both here. I like to put it under storage, but I'll put that here. And then again, we can copy this enum. If you remember last week, we talked about enum. So the event is an enum in and itself. So yeah. So it's an enum with the macro, the derived macro of drop and a Starknet event. Again, remember that Cairo also supports meta programming, and this takes in code and generates other code. Anyways, we'll go back to event, and then what event are we supposed to create? It's supposed to be counter increase. So we'll copy this and put it in here. Counter increase. Okay. Sometimes this autocomplete is not the best. So counter increase there and counter increase there. It should still have a problem because I mean we have defined counter increase here, but we still need the struct. So if you see here, you still have to define a struct here. So I'm just going to copy this and I'll paste it here and paste it here. And I will change the name to counter increase. I should stop complaining. And I think it's supposed to take a new value of u 32, but we can see. So we can call it value. So defining the value variable. So we'll call it value instead of new value. And then we just need to emit it once the counter is increased, right? So when we have increased counter, we need to emit it. So it says emit the event in the increased counter function. Again, if you want to learn how to emit the event, this will show it. So it's just self.emit and then put that there. So we can just copy this again. And put it here, self.emit. And then again, remember that this is a struct of counter increase, so we can just do it here. So I'm putting the value that we want to emit, which is value counter +1. So yeah, this should emit an event that counter is increased. So let's try to run a scrap test to see. Oh, increased. Right. So a variant called counter increased. Okay, so I'll change that here. counter increase. I'll just name this counter increase. This should be fine. I need to also change this here. Then we run a scarp test. Okay, just running through this worked. And this is a checkpoint we should try to deploy now and test. So I'm going to try to deploy right now. So again, remember I told you all to install Starknet. So Starknet is the tool we're going to use to deploy. So we first need to run a scarp build. So scarp build. And this should be the contract that we just created, which is the counter increase contract. And then we can do a Starknet, declare, and once you run a scarp build, it creates a target folder here and dev. So we will go there. So target, okay. I can just do a backpack, target, dev, and then it's a counter contract. So go here, counter, and then put in the password. And I would walk you all through how to set up a Starknet properly because I already have it set up. This is it. In this case, I already declared the class hash once. So I already built this before. So it does not need to redeclare the class hash again because it has the same function. So in this case, we can just deploy. So we can use Starknet again. Starknet deploy and put this. Again, we're also going to set the initial value because we have a constructor that takes an initial value. So we also have to put the initial value here. I'll set it to 0 and then I will try to deploy and this should work. Okay, so it's deploying. And this should deploy to Sepolia because I set up it on Sepolia. And Starknet is quite fast. So right now we should have it on Sepolia. So if you go here and do a stack scan, I'll just change this one. So stack scan. And we switch this to Sepolia. I'll just change this to Bright. And then we paste in the address of the contract we just deployed. We should be able to see it here. And if I send this to you, if you have Sepolia set up, you should also be able to interact with it. So again, it's a global state now, so everybody can add to it and take away from it. So if we check the counter, because we set it to 0 on initialization, it's 0. We want to write to it. I'm just going to quickly switch to Sepolia, yeah? Second. Okay, so I'm going to quickly switch to Sepolia and connect my wallet here. And then I'm going to call the increase function, right? So if I call the increase counter function, this as a transaction, if you want to look into the transaction is here. But if you go back to read, remember when we first did it was 0, now it should be 1. You know, if anybody else calls it from their end, it should increase it. This is kind of like a basic contract that does counter, and maybe you can build a simple interface on it. And this is what we're going to be touching upon next week, you know, the contract interface. Front end, so how to use Starknet.js. And we're going to be using Starknet.js, but there's multiple, you know, SDKs that we can use to interact with Starknet. But in this case, we're going to be using Starknet.js on how to interact with contracts that is deployed on Sepolia.